Monday was not a good day for the optics for the Cincinnati Bengals front office. Let's get into the vet workouts and signings that didn't happen. And despite all that, the Bengals remain in the AFC playoff picture.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm Jake Lisco. He's James Rapine. We are Locked On Bengals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. We just finished talking about coaches being on the hot seat for the Cincinnati Bengals, and now we need to talk more, because we talked about the front office yesterday as well, more about the front office, as it was not a good day, at least from the outside looking in, as they brought some veterans in for workouts and just signed a practice squad running back as of the time of us recording this episode. This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by Ultimate Football GM, where you can use promo code LOCKEDONNFL, all caps, in the game store to get a big boost to your franchise when you start up. James, we want to shout out the everydayers as we always do. We want to shout out all of you who make us your first listen and welcome in the new listeners, as we're going to take some time today to, well, I guess talk about the front office in the middle of the season, as we have for the last few weeks, as we did leading into the trade deadline. The Bengals hosted Xavien Howard and Leonard Fournette, among other veterans, reportedly, for workouts on Monday. And as of the time of us recording this episode, we know that they made an offer to Xavien Howard, and that the two sides were unable to reach an agreement.
Yeah, and let's just say it all out loud, right? So Xavien Howard is a 31-year-old former All-Pro cornerback that hasn't been in the NFL this season, spent his entire career up to this point with the Miami Dolphins. Lou Anarumo was in Miami when they drafted him in 2016 with the 38th overall pick. So there's a natural tie. And over the years, I've written, when Xavien Howard was an All-Pro corner and a reportedly available to now, like, oh yeah, Xavien Howard makes a lot of sense. And so on the surface, and this is something we heard little rumblings about last week, I think it's fair to say, it's like, oh, well, this should get done. Assuming he has a solid workout, they'll bring him in and bolster their cornerback depth. And it didn't get done, despite him having a solid workout, according to Mike Garafolo. Now, that's coming from the agent. Full disclosure, we know that he had a solid workout and that Xavien's headed home. So why wouldn't a deal get done? And I think that's where when you mention optics, it gets to. There's no way Xavien Howard has a bunch of negotiating power. He hasn't gone on a bunch of workouts in recent weeks. It doesn't feel like he's got any leverage. And he probably, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up starting here pretty early. Like, I don't think he would have came in and just been your fifth cornerback. I think he would have gotten playing time, and you could easily see a path to him making an impact if he still has something left. So if he did well in the workout and they made him an offer, where's the disconnect here why he is not a Bengal today? I was expecting at one point today, Jake, that they were going to get a deal done. And I think it was probably post-workout before the negotiating part of it went down. But how much negotiating is there with 8 games left in the season? He needs to sign somewhere. You need to sign him. Go get him. I think that's weird.
I can't imagine he's looking for a multi-year deal. I don't think that prorated differences in money, because you're only paying the guy salary for 7 games. They're 10 games into a 17-game season. So
it's
hard to imagine.
Bad math. Not 8 games left. 7 games. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. Good Lord.
I think I said 8 games before we started recording.
Okay.
So you can blame me. But the money shouldn't have been an issue here. There are some allegations out there of misconduct. That, whatever that issue is, when the Bengals bring him in, they know about that in the first place. So sure. I had some mentions from fans saying, I'm fine this didn't work out because of the allegations, which is fine. And I didn't know about that before somebody told me about it. So either way, that doesn't really explain the fact that they had him in. He had a workout that reportedly was good. They made an offer,
Yep.
They were unable to get it done, which means they wanted him. And we just spent a lot of time talking about Lou Anarumo yesterday and this defensive staff and this thing where, well, maybe the front office just isn't giving him what he wants. They let Jesse Bates walk. They let DJ Reader walk. They let Von Bell walk. Then they brought Von Bell back for essentially free. And then they get to this point today where, yeah, they apparently decide they want Xavien Howard and then can't get the deal done.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't know exactly why the deal didn't get done. There could be a totally reasonable explanation for this. We don't know. But on its face, the optics, which is where I started the show, and you brought up as well, James, you referenced it. The optics of this story seem embarrassing for the front office because brought in this veteran who could help them, even if it was just a depth signing, even if he was just going to be the first corner off the bench. Maybe there wasn't a starting job for him. Even if he was just going to be the first corner off the bench, they wanted him to be a Cincinnati Bengal this year because they made him an offer. And they couldn't agree to terms with a mid-season straight free agent that they brought in for a workout.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just such a bad look.
And these are the type of deals that are just no-brainers. Like, they didn't sign Leonard Fournette, right? Well, if he had a good workout, I'm sure they would have signed. Like, if he was really good in that workout, it's not like it's like, oh, well, they offered him a practice squad spot and he said no. And no. They offered Xavien Howard and wanted him on the roster. I'm confident in that. And so, yeah, it doesn't feel good. And I think the Lou part of it is the big part of it, because there's a very real scenario where some of these guys lose their jobs. That's why we did the show we did yesterday. Check it out if you didn't and you missed it. Where significant coaches on this staff lose their jobs this offseason or in January if things don't turn around in a hurry. And Lou could be one of those guys. Not saying it's going to happen, but I certainly think there's a path to it. That's why we did the show. And so for something this simple, where we're talking about 1.1 million prorated over 7 games, that's zero money, not a lot of money. And if it's something Lou wanted, all right, well, let's see if it can help. Understanding the fact that there are shortcomings with this team. Understanding, by the way, that and this was what I was prepared to do, Jake, because I was prepared to say, well, why in the hell did you make this move in November if you were open to Xavien Howard in the first place? Why would you go after Leonard Fournette in November if you were open to Leonard Fournette on the practice squad in the first place? These guys could have been here. Xavien Howard's courtship should have happened at worst after the Daxo injury, would have been my logic. Well, Leonard Fournette, you could have just stashed him on the practice squad for the past few months. So he is in shape when you do have an injury to a key guy like Zach Moss. So, like, that's where the frustrating part of this would have been to me. But now it hits another layer because it's like, all right, well, we just talk about the coaches. And we clearly know that Lou is shorthanded. And part of that is his fault. And guys he targeted or helped target in free agency, fine. But he clearly wants Xavien Howard. So get him Xavien Howard. It's like saying, man, I'm starving. Let me get a number 5 from McDonald's. Like, just get the number 5, get the kid a Happy Meal. All right. That's the Big Daddy line that half of our viewers probably don't remember. But like, that's literally, it's such a small thing. It's not a big thing. It's not a multi-year deal. It's not a challenging thing. So on its surface, I think people are going to be frustrated, and rightfully so. Is there more to it? Probably. But if the workout went well, you were willing to sign him despite all those allegations, you brought him in for the workout, you made him an offer, the next step is done deal. And we should be seeing Xavien Howard at practice on Wednesday, and we're not going to be doing that, at least as of now.
Added to the pile of frustrations with the front office over the last few years. And there are people wondering why we're not doing, is the front office on the hot seat? Well, they own the team. So hot seat with fans, yeah, obviously. But there is, they control the temperature dial. You know what I mean? So it's not a very good look for the team. You referenced the McDonald's Happy Meal. It's more like the $1.50 hot dog from Costco, man. Like, in terms of prices we're talking about here.
Dang. He said that number 5 is way too expensive.
I mean, that's what we're talking about from like a NFL financial perspective. Anyway, the Bengals did make a move as of the time of recording here. It's a relatively minor move. We'll cover that move and wrap up this conversation coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by Ultimate Pro Football GM. Locked on Bengals fans, you remember Ultimate Pro Football GM. They're back and they have added an amazing new game mode that I have to tell you about. The game that has you step into the shoes of a football franchise GM and lead it to glory now has a new head coach career mode. So, on top of getting to build your dynasty by drafting players, signing free agents like Xavien Howard, hiring a coaching staff, people are really going to love this. Now you also get to call offensive plays during the game as well. The play calling, Jake. Bengals fans need this in their life right now. Ultimate Pro Football GM is completely free, has no ads, and 100% playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. And here's a special offer for Locked On fans. Use promo code Locked On NFL, all caps, inside the game to receive a free boost to your franchise. It's inside the game store. Make sure to get it, as this perk will jumpstart your path to creating a dynasty. Again, that's ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com, or look it up in the App Store and use code LOCKEDONNFL. That's Locked On NFL, Ultimate Pro Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Today's episode of Locked On Bengals is also sponsored by FanDuel, where you can get into the NFL action with America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, and when you win that first $5 bet, you will get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. You're looking ahead to Sunday Night Football this week. The Bengals got flexed into prime time. It is a massive game with playoff implications. Well, gauge your faith in the Cincinnati Bengals. Find the best bets, and when you make that $5 bet and win, you'll get those $150 in bonus bets. Not only that, FanDuel's app offers you everything you need to act on hunches in the middle of the game by seeing the latest stats, play-by-play, and so much more information in the same place you place your bets. You get started again with $150 in bonus bets when you win that first $5 bet with FanDuel at FanDuel.com, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The Bengals signed a veteran running back on Monday, but it wasn't Leonard Fournette, passing on the former top pick for Gary Brightwell. Jake, did you know who Gary Brightwell was before the Bengals signed him to their practice squad on Monday?
Gary Brightwell was a 6th-round pick in the 2021 NFL draft out of Arizona, which I did not know before the Bengals
I was going to say,
him.
Did you know?
The reason that I let it off that way is because I went back and I looked at our 2021 draft spreadsheet to see if we had any notes on him. And of course, in 2021, we did not look at running backs that year. And so we had no information on any of the running backs in that class recorded in our draft spreadsheet, the one that I work on with Joe Goodberry that you've heard us talk about year over year if you're an everydayer, if you're a longtime listener. So no, we did not have any information on Gary Brightwell going to the draft. And I don't think that anyone outside of New York or Cleveland would be terribly aware of Brightwell besides, people with a personal interest in his career, because he's been a special teamer throughout his career. His most heavy workload as an offensive player in the NFL came in 2022 with the New York Giants. I think he had 32 carries for something like 4.7 yards per attempt that year with the Giants on offense. That was also his heaviest year of special teams use. He had 323 of his 637 career special team snaps in 2022. He had 20 special team snaps with the Cleveland Browns this year. So he'll be on the Bengals practice squad. Good size, 218. He was 218 at the combine as well. He's listed at 6'1", depending on where you look. He at the combine was shorter than 5'11", so I don't know where the 6'1" listing is coming from, or maybe they just measured him really wrong at the combine in 2021. But there's good size there with Brightwell. Didn't test like a great athlete, and I knew none of this, James, to answer your question, before the Bengals signed him to the practice squad on Monday.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things here. One, I'm fine with the Chase Brown, Khalil Herbert 1-2 punch. Two, adding a guy like Gary Brightwell doesn't make me less worried about the running back room if Chase Brown gets hurt, right? Like, it doesn't like, I know it is depth, but it doesn't feel like depth. It's very much all right, well, what are you going to do if something happens? And so, yeah, the size part of it, he's certainly their heaviest running back, that unless they trust Kendall Milton, which I would imagine because you bring in a Leonard Fournette, because you work out multiple veterans, like there's questions there with Kendall Milton, and maybe Milton would have been the one that gets released had you signed a Xavien Howard, for example. So who knows? Speculating there, but a Brightwell addition, yeah, maybe he'll help on special teams. Maybe he was just that much better in the workout, but you can't really expect him to contribute much on offense if an injury happens. And, I was looking up some free agent running back lists when they brought in Leonard Fournette, and I'm just like, all right, well, who else is out there? And to me, like, I get it. You're looking for size, like Jerick McKinnon, Boston Scott, like there are guys out there that to me would give you a little bit more, and it doesn't have to be, Lombardi Lenny, playoff Lenny, or whatever you want to call him. So I wouldn't have been necessarily all in with Leonard Fournette. And maybe it's a size thing. They want a bigger back. Fine. They got it in Gary Brightwell. But to me, this is a special teamer that he's caught 11 career passes. So it's not like he's filling it up there and you feel comfortable with him as a pass catcher. He's helping Darren Simmons more than he's helping Zach Taylor and Dan Pitcher and Joe Burrow.
And maybe that's it, I guess. Maybe. I don't.
Which is fine if that's their logic. Yeah, it's fine.
I don't know where they've lost a special teamer though. Like they've lost Zach Moss. That wasn't a big special teams contributor. Is there a special teamer that's hurt that I'm?
Eric All wasn't a primary special teamer. So.
He was doing some special teams. Was he still though? I don't know what.
Probably. I assume they were phasing him out of that. Yeah, I would assume that was. I mean, because he was tight end 1, to be very clear. So
this is relatively easy to check, and I will work on that. But the reason that I ask is that the running back that he ostensibly replaces on the depth chart, say he is ahead of Kendall Milton on the depth chart now, hypothetically. Kendall Milton, in his one game up for the Bengals this year, played 0 special team snaps. So, like, that's where I'm looking at, is there a special teams thing here? Eric Hall was still playing on kickoff return team. That's the only place he was playing in significant time. He was also on the field goal kick blocking unit, and he was still doing that when he got hurt in week 9. I don't think that you replace Eric Hall with Gary Brightwell in any of those situations.
Kenny. What about Kenny?
I was looking at Kendall Milton's.
No, I'm just messing with you.
Name.
What about Travion Williams? What if that's the replacement? What if it's like, all right, we need a bigger back around these two in Chase Brown and Khalil Herbert. And so we get the bigger back in Gary Brightwell. He can also do the special teams. He can also return kicks. Yeah. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the appeal there. And then you can still have Kendall Milton around as a guy who doesn't necessarily need to, you're not banking on to play special teams as he learns the offense, but you have a guy in Brightwell who can fill that Travion Williams special teams void as RB3. Who knows? Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm foreshadowing a little bit.
Credit to you for finding a way to get excited about that. Well, you just had the energy there. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just like, all right, sure. Like, great. Like the attitude toward it is all.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you just don't know the logic, and it might be as simple as, all right, well, we want more size there and also special teams experience. And so he can be RB3 and do both. And maybe that's it. I don't know.
No, that's where I'm at. It's like we're spending this time talking about because they made the move. And we're trying to figure out how it fits, all that stuff, and it's important to figure that out. But man, they're trying. They had all these veterans in on Monday, trying to find a piece that could actually help them and help, even if it's like a very small move of the needle. Like move the needle a degree, you know what I mean? Like just from here, just a tiny little bit, and then Gary Brightwell is the move that we get to talk about.
I will say when you say it out loud, right? So over the past week, we know that they put in a waiver claim on Yannick Ngakoue.
Yeah,
they worked out Leonard Fournette. They worked out Xavien Howard. They worked out Gary Brightwell, and they put in a waiver claim on Isaiah Williams.
And the trades they tried to make.
And I like Isaiah Williams, right? And so they bring in Isaiah, they win that claim with Isaiah Williams, and they sign Gary Brightwell. Those two names out of all the names, yeah, that's rough. And yeah, the trades they tried to make, which we don't know exact on it, but yeah, it does feel a bit underwhelming, even for them.
I mean, we do know that they were reportedly in on the defensive line and cornerback market in trades. And they traded for a running back, which we also thought they might do because of the Zach Moss injury. But
Sure.
like we can at least easily believe that they were trying to make trades for defensive players.
Yeah.
And have they signed? They haven't added a single defensive player since the trade
No.
deadline when they were trying
Howard
to
and
add defensive
Ngakoue could have
players.
been it. Yeah, could have been those two. That's
Man,
what's crazy. Think about it. They could have had 3 huge names, whether they're
Yeah.
still good or not. And you get Gary, aka Jake calls him Kenny Brightwell, and Isaiah Williams. That's rough. By the way, if you had said Kenny Brightwell the entire segment, how many of our listeners would have actually cared? I don't know the answer to that.
Poor
Despite
Gary
all of
Brightwell.
that,
Not to take
yeah,
anything away from these guys, to be clear. But yeah, go ahead.
sure, we're having fun. But yeah, I think despite all of that, the Bengals are still in the playoff race. They got some help on Sunday as well. We will get into that coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. The Bengals, well, they host the Steelers on December 1st, so that's their next home game. But maybe, like me, you're going out to LA for Bengals Chargers and what is a must win, and you don't have tickets yet to SoFi Stadium. That's all right. You need the Game Time app because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite live events, whether it's NFL games, whether it's NBA games, whether it's concerts, so much easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And right now, you can get the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL. You'll get $20 off your first purchase. They have all-in pricing, which shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Also, their lowest price guarantee. Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you don't get the lowest price. So download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON NFL. Locked On NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time.
The playoff picture in the AFC really has taken quite a bit of shape here as we head into week 11 for the Cincinnati Bengals, a big game coming up with another team in the wild card mix in the AFC. But the wild card mix, as it is today, consists of essentially 3 teams battling for one spot, barring somebody falling way off. But the wild card standings right now are the Baltimore Ravens, currently the 5 seed behind the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers haven't played as many games as the Ravens. The Ravens have lost 3 games, the Steelers 2. They have the same number of wins. The Steelers continue to win games with a level of plot armor this year in the NFL, only surpassed by the Detroit Lions and Kansas City Chiefs. But the Ravens at 5 in the AFC, the Los Angeles Chargers, the Bengals' opponent this week, at 6 in the AFC at 6-3. The Denver Broncos at 7 at 5-5, and they just lost one of those plot armor games, getting a field goal blocked against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Indianapolis Colts ahead of the Bengals by tiebreaker based on win percentage in conference games at 8 right now, and the Bengals at 9. The Jets right behind the Bengals at 3-7 at 10. But the way you most easily distill this, the most likely path is that one team makes that last wild card spot between the Denver Broncos, Indianapolis Colts, and Cincinnati Bengals.
Yeah, I think they're firmly still in it, and I think fans are going to dismiss that because of how it feels at 4-6. You got to get these next 2. And I think you and I both agree. If you go 2-1 over the Baltimore, Los Angeles, Pittsburgh stretch, you feel pretty good about your shot, about your chances. Now, would have been nice to get that first one against Baltimore, stay alive in the division, and I think that those chances are completely dead at this point. But I don't think that they're out of this because they are not just on the bubble when it's CBS or Fox or insert whatever station you're watching shows the playoff picture for the AFC. They're 9th right now. They're right in the mix. And when you have a quarterback and a wide receiver playing at the level that they are, and the quarterback part of it is huge, obviously, I don't think that there's any reason to think that they can't go to LA and win or go even 2-0 against Pittsburgh, a really good Pittsburgh team. I think it's possible. Possible might not be plausible, are realistic at this point, but we may feel differently in a few weeks. So I'm not willing to dismiss them yet, but they better win at SoFi on Sunday night. It's that simple.
I was not very optimistic, and I don't think you should be like super optimistic from a realistic perspective that the Bengals will make the playoffs. But when you tell me that their competition is primarily the Denver Broncos and Indianapolis Colts, because I don't think
Yep.
anyone's buying the New York Jets and New England Patriots right now, it feels a little bit different. Not
Bo
quite
Nix,
to the point of optimism, but
Joe
they have
Flacco.
a game against Denver. They have a
Yep.
game against the Chargers. The Chargers are still technically in that wild card mix. I think the Chargers are good. They
Yeah.
have the best scoring defense in the NFL. You go look at who they've played, and the best offense they've played this year is probably Kansas City, and Kansas City is not a good offense this year. But I guess the Arizona Cardinals, probably the best offense they've played. And they held the Cardinals to 17 points in a 17-15 loss in Arizona. But that defense has given up only 118 points this year. And Harbaugh in his first year seems to be getting his team bought in, and the schedule has been pretty favorable for them. You know, the Raiders, the Panthers, the Broncos, the Saints, the Browns, the Titans, all part of their early season schedule. It gets real for them now with the Bengals and the Ravens and the Falcons and the Chiefs again, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in their next 5 weeks. So I wouldn't dismiss LA as part of that wild card competition for the Bengals, but you could probably dismiss LA as part of that wild card competition for the Bengals if they win this week. And if the Bengals can't come home from LA primetime Sunday night football with a win, which, you know, just like every game until they're eliminated, or until such time as they would be eliminated, not saying they will be eliminated, is going to be like huge playoff leverage, huge, you know, playoff percentage if they win, if they lose swing. But they did get a little bit of help. Their playoff odds went up a little bit with that Denver Broncos loss. And I think the Colts also lost, right?
They did
Over the weekend. And those things helped them a little bit.
Yeah. I think if you get 5 AFC wins, you certainly feel great. If you get 5 wins in general, I think you have a real shot. 6, you're in. And so 6-1 is a tough ask, but if you read it out loud, it would be the Chargers, the Broncos. You got to get those 2. One of the Steelers games, there's 3. Titans, 4. Dallas with no Dak, 5. You know, you can add them really quickly and see how it can come together. And we've seen this in the past. The 2013 Bengals were 3-6 to start the year, led by Andy Dalton, or 2012, his second season, led by Andy Dalton. And they rallied and made the playoffs. Different NFL, not a 17-game season, much different defense, certainly, but a flawed football team, and they figured it out. And so maybe this team, flaws and all, finds a way to get to the postseason. I'm not going to dismiss Joe yet, but I do think that this is the game, because I think the Chargers are in the playoffs. I think they are that good. And so getting a game over them, getting that tiebreaker, and getting an AFC win, which you desperately need some of these AFC wins in general, it will go a long way toward me thinking that they could realistically make a run.
Yeah, I mean, from the playoff percentage or playoff standings perspective, they need the AFC wins, because that's going to be a tiebreaker that they're going to have to deal with most likely if it's not a head-to-head tiebreaker. But also just beating a good team. In all of their games against teams with winning records this year, they got the 1-point loss to Kansas City. They've got the 5-point loss to Washington. They've got the 3-point loss to Baltimore after they missed a kick. They let the game get away from them against Philly. That's their most lopsided loss of the year. And then they failed against Baltimore in the clutch down the stretch there and lost by 1 this week. Can they beat a good team? Can they finish a game? Can we answer the allegations that Joe Burrow isn't clutch because he's had all these opportunities to go win games at the end and then he hasn't won? I retweeted an article today from Mike Sando. Mike Sando did a great job of taking that claim down. So I don't need to get further into that now. Go read it for the full analysis there. Point is Joe Burrow is still clutch, but the team is letting him down. So the team needs to step up.
Were those real allegations?
Oh, constant. Yeah. There's some voices out there that are very loud about that.
Yeah.
Because he's like, what's the record?
Some voices should be muted.
He's like 1-9 or something in a certain situation, but like he's taking the team down and scoring touchdowns and then they're losing anyway, you know? Anyway.
Yeah.
Mike Sando did a good job on that.
That's so wild to me. Like, oh my God. You
Yeah.
can find a stat for anything.
You can. That's true. But
Kevin Brightwell had 52 touchdowns. Who'd you call him? You called him Kenny. Kenny Brightwell.
We got 3 names for Gary Brightwell in this episode. So the point I was trying to make is generally that like the team around Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, as we've been discussing, needs to be better. And if they can get Orlando Brown and T. Higgins back this week, that's a big deal. If they can get these free agents that they signed to play better down the stretch, that's a big deal. If they can get some of these young guys to play better down the stretch, if they can play Miles Murphy more, coaching decision down the stretch, those things could help. But the team around Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase will need to be better for them to make this run. And despite how badly things have gone, they're still in a position where they can make that run, which is kind of crazy to think about.
What do you think the odds are that we have a listener named Kevin Brightwell or Kenny Brightwell? Which one would you pick? Would you stick with Kenny because that's the name you said for Gary? Or would you go with Kevin because that's the one that I thought you said for Gary?
I don't know. If
one's
that is your name,
I'm rolling with Kevin. I think there's a Kevin Brightwell out there that listens to Locked On Bengals. But if there's a Kenny or a Gary, let us know too.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. We'll be back with you tomorrow for most likely a mailbag. We'll see if we have other news to talk about between now and then, but keep your eyes out for an opportunity to get those mailbag questions in. Until then, thanks for listening. Hoo day, and have a good one.